Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the latest edition of Sustainably Talking, episode 12, I think, or if it was still the ESG show, episode 79, I think now. And today we've got two fantastic guests who are dialing in from Nigeria, and this is going to be a very rare thing to actually happen, but they're actually dialing in from Nigeria, which is actually cooler than the UK right now. So there's a first. I don't think I'd ever thought I'd say that. So Africa, there's a lot of opportunity and challenge related to Africa at the moment. It will be affected by climate change more than any other region on the planet. Yet it also contributes less CO2 emissions than any other continent, with the exception of Antarctica. But there is opportunity too for Nigeria, and maybe more than most. It's the biggest economy in Africa. Some projections suggest its population could overtake China's by the end of this century. Not only is Nigeria, and indeed most of Africa, exceptionally sunny, making it ideal for solar, Nigeria and a lot of countries in the surrounding area also exceptionally windy. This map illustrates that quite well, which I've taken from a report. I'll show you the report. So you can see how that region where Nigeria sits, sort of Central Africa, is sunny and it's windy. So there's an incredible opportunity there for renewables. And Africa will also be the main supplier of young people in the next few decades. And maybe technology such as renewables, online education, creates an opportunity for Africa to overcome many of the hurdles that have held it back in the past. And today I'm joined by Ubon Abasi Kuki, an African economist. Let me call up your profile. Ubon, an African environmentalist, scientist who bridges the climate research, carbon systems, AI and community-driven innovation to advance a more sustainable future. And also, Ubon is at the bottom left-hand corner, if your screen looks like me. Hello, Ubon. How are you?
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. And also on the show today, we have Turabong Samuel, ecology researcher, advancing biodiversity, conservation, suitable agriculture, climate resilience, freshwater protection, science communication, and community-driven environmental sustainability across Nigeria initiatives. Welcome to you both, guys. And I'll speak to you both in a couple of seconds. And before we get started, I thought I would run a quick video. This is from Magat Wade, interviewed by Jordan Peterson. It's only a short video, 41 seconds. I'm just going to run that, and then I'm going to ask Ubon and Turabong a couple of questions related to it.
About the climate change. Oh, gee, climate change. I'm not even going to go and argue the scientific argument. I'm not. Your solution right now is to tell me we stop all carbon emission, we stop all fossil fuels right now. Right now. But Jordan, what does that mean if we did that? What does that mean if we did that? It means
poor people will freeze in the dark and bake in the sun while they starve.
Thank you. You just signed a death warrant for 1.3 billion people, of them 1 billion black people. And you just told me that Black Lives Matter. So even when it comes to climate, you're full of it.
All right, so I was wondering if either of you got any comments to make about that. Turabong, do you have any thoughts about that clip that I've just played you?
Yeah, Mike. See, Margaret is not completely wrong. She's very much completely right about the fact that cutting off energy would actually be very devastating for developing countries, especially the likes of developing nations in Africa. Well, you see, the goal won't be to completely leave people in the dark. Is to change where the energy spark comes from. where the spark, where energy comes from. And I don't think anyone serious about global climate policy would suggest we should just turn off fossil fuels overnight. It would come as a transition. The goal is just to scale up renewable energy infrastructure such as solar, hydropower, geothermal, and wind, while facing down fossil fuels, while facing it down bit by bit by bit by bit. And the objective is just to ensure that the entire old carbon emissions are stopped, while clean, reliable electricity takes the place so that we aren't left to freezing or we aren't left without power, just like Margaret suggests. I think we should not copy developing nations such as Nigeria and Africa should not copy the entire path that the entirety of Europe and especially the North Americans took about 150 years ago. I think we should also think of it like mobile phones. You see, countries like Nigeria, where I'm from, we skipped the entire process of burying massive copper lines across continents to communicate about a lot of years ago, and we just came down straight to mobile phones and mobile communications. Similarly, we should do such with renewable energy. We should make sure we have decentralized solar grids, which are much easier and less expensive than building massive coal plants. So Margaret is totally right, but I beg to differ on some points. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And Ubon, do you have anything to add to that?
Thank you so much, Michael. I totally agree with what Margaret said because I'm looking at Africa where we stand right now. Currently, the giants of Africa, we're really portrayed Nigeria, hugely depends on fossil fuels like crude oil for its energy sources. So cutting fossil fuels is theoretical and not very practicable. So Margaret is very right on what she says. So Africa at this point should look towards embracing sustainable developmental goals, goals such as the gradual elimination of fossil fuels, gradual elimination of crude oil, and every form of carbon associated energy sources, and slowly using a very modular process, transitioning into solar-based systems, geothermal energy sources, as my brother mentioned, and because we're at a very good place. We stand at a crossroad where we have very high levels of irradiation. We have there was a map you pulled up earlier that we have like very good wind energy in Africa. So these are what Africa should look into, and it can be done abruptly. That means Africa will be moving without a plan. So what Africa has to do at this point, and Nigeria most especially, means that we should move towards intentionally adhering and implementing those sustainable developmental goals, the plans that economies, policies, conferences has put forward for Africa and Nigeria as a whole, that we should adhere to, get these plans and slowly and modularly implement these plans to ensure that Africa stands at the place where it's meant to stand. So we cannot totally eliminate the use of fossil fuels, but we can gradually transition and phase out fossil energy and focus more on renewable green energy for Africa and Nigeria. Thank you so much, Michael.
All right, thank you for that. We've had a few comments. I'll just quickly pull them up on the screen. Hello from France. Hello, Eric. Hello from Indonesia. Thank you, Dewey. And okay, right. So much for what Margaret Wade had to say. But I think you were telling me the other day that Africa has been trapped in what you referred to as a passive victimhood narrative, where you are seen as the victims. I'll hand that question to you first, Ubon. Can you explain what you mean by that, please?
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. So this is very true. Africa is we are actually a passive victim of global climate change. This is a statement of fact because when we look at data released from reputable organizations like WHO, we see that Africa contributes just about 3 to 4% of global climate change. So in terms of fossil fuels and gas and carbon emissions, Africa just contributes 3 to 4%, which is very nominal and very minimal in comparison to what our counterparts in developed parts of the world have been contributing over time. And we also understand that Africa stands on the margins when it comes to the geographical location. Africa is situated at the tropical ends of the earth, which has forced Africa to sustain and endure climate changes and problems which our counterparts in Europe and other parts of the world do not go through, at least not felt. So Africa, it's not just a concept, it's actually something that Africa at this point are going through. So apart from that, we're also very vulnerable in terms of our energy infrastructures developments coming later than the most parts of the world. So as much as the rest of Africa has been able, the rest of the world has been able to efficiently cushion the effects of climate change because of the advancements in technology and development. This has been a shortfall for Africa because we're on the backwards trajectory when it comes to development, making Africa not able to efficiently cushion the effects of global climate energy. But looking at the other side, we have been the ones to go through all of this. Why? Because we've been short on development. We're wrongly, I won't say wrongly, but geographically positioned in a way in the tropics, which has kept us at this place. So, speaking sustainably, say Africa has been this passive victim, but moving forward, we cannot continue on this path of the victim mindset. What Africa has to do at this point is to embrace their strengths. So our geographic positioning gives us these very high levels of irradiation, which we should be able to harness. We also stand at the place that we have enough hydroelectric potentials, thermal potentials, and the rest. And Africa should be able to utilize this to its good. We are also benefiting from global carbon budgets and many others, and Africa should be able to utilize this and implement solutions that would shift us from being passive victims to thought leaders and leaders when it comes to sustainable energy. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thank you for that. Turabong, I'd like to extend that argument to you a little bit more and ask you, so what's the solution? What do we do about this?
Okay. Thank you so much, Mike. Just like my colleague said, he's expanded that very much for us. And for the solution, I think I want to look at the solution in just one line. Our solution is just a shift in perspective. We need that entire shift in perspective, just like you said, the international communities. The views from this lens of we're the victims, we're just the victims, and we need that to change. Africa as a whole is no longer just asking for charity and climate to survive the climate impact, which of course we had a very little hand to play in it, and we're suffering from it greatly. We're just demanding equitable partnerships. We need technology transfers, good technology transfers. We need fair investments to drive our own economy to be able to fund these sustainability goals. And we need the narrative to change entirely from what can the world do for Africa rather to what can the world achieve by investing in Africa. Once we get that shit changing perspective, I believe we're going to have a very right way to go, Mike. Thank you very much.
All right, okay, but I mean there are a lot of headwinds, and let's start with food insecurity. Is this an abstract or future threat, immediate, or are we talking about some kind of structural disruption? Who would like to answer that question first? Torabong, do you want to go first, and then I'll hand the same question over to you, Ubon.
Okay. Thank you so much. This is a big topic, Mike. And food insecurity, we could talk about this all day long, especially from where we come from. But just to answer your question, food insecurity here down here is a very much immediate structural disruption of our national security. It is in fact also disrupting our supply chains. It's affecting our economic growth as a country and as a continent, and it's affecting the daily survivals of tens of millions of people. And just according to someone I love to read from, Kadri Harmonies. He says that the definitive Regional Food Security Authority managed by the FAO of the Nigeria Ministry of Agriculture projects that nearly 35 million Nigerians are projected to face acute food insecurity. Not just any kind, we are having acute 35 million Nigerians face acute food insecurity. And this is phase three. This is what we call the crisis level when it comes to food insecurity. It's the phase three. And it's worse. It's very bad, Mike. It's very bad, Michael. And this is even during the lean season. There's another lean season too. But the truth
Right.
is Nigeria's food insecurity is structural because the very mechanisms required to feed the nation, such as affordable transportation, physical safety for producers, and predictable weather patterns, are already broken, and they are broken simultaneously. So it's an immediate structural disruption to our national security as a whole. Thank you very much for that.
Okay. And Uber, same question to you. I don't know whether you have any thoughts about vertical farms, whether that's a potential solution where the source of food could be a lot closer to the point of consumption. I don't know whether you've got any thoughts about that anyway, but I would be interested in your thoughts about food insecurity. Food insecurity.
Thank you so much for that, Michael. So, food insecurity in Nigeria is a very critical issue, and this stems from a lack of critical infrastructure as one of the factors that has been impacting us lately over time. But also, it's been our over reliance on very archaic methods of securing food for our nation and for our continent. So, Nigeria, as it stands, has huge potentials and has a vast area of farmers. But the issue we have is we don't just have farmers, but we have so many subsistence farmers. If we take a look at countries like the United States, just 1% of the population are into farming. But this very minute population, this very minute percentage of citizens of the populace are feeding the entire country and even getting exports out of the country. But Nigeria stands at a place where we have a lot of subsistence farming, have a lot of archaic farming methodologies and methods which do not serve Nigeria, talk less of Africa as a whole. So we're at a very important crossroad. And to save our situation and to save ourselves, we have to think of sustainability. We have to think of sustainable methods. We have to think of mechanized farming. We have to think about the entire agricultural value chain. So we have to think about our inadequate storage systems, our weak cold chain infrastructure, and our entire supply chain inefficiencies. So where are the opportunities for Nigeria as it comes to, as it relates to food insecurity? So basically, we have to look at our entire chain. So from plantation to pre-plantation, that's the clearing the lands and everything, to plantation to post plantation to harvesting to post plantation to post harvesting to as even relates to transportation. So these are way we have to invest in smart systems, smart irrigation systems, sustainable agricultural methods, and incorporation of biotechnology and the rest. So these are the things we as Africans have to invest in and look into so we could sustain ourselves as a country and also our continent at large. So please, thank you so much, Michael.
Okay, thank you for that. I was wondering if either of you got any thoughts about this particular question. Over all the continent, countries started creating their green taxonomies to favour green investments. What's the status these days in Nigeria? Do either of you any thoughts about that?
On the continent, countries that are creating their green taxonomies to favor green investments. What is status? Yes. This is also a thing here in Nigeria and a lot of developing countries around Africa. We have been creating suitable environments, just like I said, that the entire perspective is going to change from what can the entire universe or what can other international communities do for Nigeria or for Africa. It's gonna change to what are they going to gain? What are they going to gain from investing in developing countries like Nigeria? We have a lot of, just like my colleague said, and the map you put up earlier, we stand at crossroads where we have a lot of sunshine and we have a lot of wind, and that's alone, that's wind and that's solar energy already. So imagine having such natural conditions already to be able to generate both wind energy and solar energy. You're creating, and if we can create those wonderful conditions to invest in these sources of energy, I believe we're actually going to be where the rest of the world is going to be too. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that. So it's
Hi,
hot in
Michael.
here.
I could relay some thoughts
Sorry,
to that.
Yvonne, yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So we can see that this is a strategy that has been adopted by very big companies like Tesla, SpaceX. We can see that they have been benefiting from carbon credits and things like that. So it's also what is going on in Nigeria right now. So we have companies, there's a new company that has been making surveillance systems. So they've been playing the parts of sustainability and green energy because now they are recently we even had a new legislation that's ensured that companies that adopt sustainable practices get access to carbon credits. So this is something that is also coming up as a growing phenomenon in Nigeria. And then we're calling on different organizations, industries, and to adopt sustainable practices. So they have access to these carbon credits, these sustainable credits that we can get from adopting a more sustainable approach. So it's a rising phenomenon in Nigeria. It's not something that is well known, but it's coming up in Nigeria, please. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for that. So it's hot in Britain today. I think it's about 33, 34 degrees. But when this show's over, I'm going to go for a walk to get some fresh air. But if it gets much hotter than that, I think it will be impossible to do that. So I'm interested, what's it going to be like in somewhere like Nigeria? If temperatures keep going up and up and up and up and up, I mean, you have to stay indoors all the time. I mean, how are you going to adjust to temperatures that are quite a bit higher than we're getting at the moment? Do you think? Any ideas? Ubon, how about if you go first on that question?
Okay, Michael, thank you so much. So I won't bend to the idea of adjusting because at some levels we can no more adjust to such extreme weather conditions, extreme temperatures. So adjusting would not be the backbone or would not be the most viable approach to follow. So what I would say is we should think towards sustainability. That's the entire essence of our show. We should think towards sustainability. And sustainability basically is just ensuring that what we have today, the climatic conditions we have today, the environmental conditions we have today is sustained for generations yet unborn. So basically what we have to do as Nigerians is adopting what climate conferences and propositions, legislations, and implementing these things to ensure that our environment is consistently habitable for not just us, but also generations yet unborn. Because if we look back, we take a retrospect to like generations and so many years before us, we understand that the climatic conditions were better, they were more sustainable, they were more habitable. But as we keep going, I mean, you complained of the weather condition in Britain. We understand that it was never this way. The houses in Britain, though everything in Britain, there were no air conditioners because it wasn't built for a hotter climate. But now we are experiencing this very audacious and very high levels of temperatures. So we are at a very critical place that we have to make a decision and we have to make it very fast and very quick. And what we have to do is adopt sustainability, implement actions, legislations, advices, conferences, conference papers, and notes. We need to adopt and implement these things to ensure that we do not just destroy the continent for ourselves, but for generations yet unborn. So adaptation, it's not really the path we need to follow. We cannot keep adapting to odious circumstances, but we can implement climate smart practices to ensure that the generation doesn't just stay for us, but for our generations yet unborn. Thank you so much, Michael.
All right, thank you. So Turabong, so what is the path to a sustainable future then? How are we going to go down that path from a Nigerian perspective?
Well, thank you so much, Mike, and thank you so much, Ubon, for that wonderful comment on the indoor, staying indoor in the buildings. And just to give a brief breakdown on what our path to sustainable future is, I'm going to speak from an African perspective. And for Africa and for Nigeria in extension, the path to a sustainable future does not depend on international charity, or it doesn't depend on carbon offset checkboxes. It depends on our commercial ambition, because we are very Africa as a whole, we have this we're not commercially ambitious to some point when it comes to sustainability. And our future when it comes to sustainability depends so much on our commercial ambition to actually push up sustainability, because we possess land, we possess the market demand, we possess an unmatched culture of entrepreneurial resilience. And I think you know that, Mike, too. But the challenge before us today is not just, is just to match that for us is to match the local grids that we have, an institutional capacity, and our institutional capital, and scalable technology, because not just any technology, we need scalable technology that we scale on large scales to actually sustain the sustainability we're actually pushing. Thank you so much, Mike.
All right, okay. I've got a similar question for you, Ubon, but I'm wondering whether we can pull in the issue of aid. So the Zambian economist and author Dambisa Moyo, she said Africa's addicted to aid. Like any addict, it needs and depends on its regular fix, finding it hard, if not impossible, to contemplate existence in an aidless world. She also said free money empowering corrupt or inefficient governments by removing the need for tax revenue and accountability to citizens. So is she right about that, Ubon? I mean, in the context of the path to a sustainable future, what are your thoughts?
Thank you so much for that, Michael. So, the the idea or the narrative from Dambisa Moyo, if I got the name correct, is something that has been a very intense debate, and I would love to just lend my thoughts to that. So, I won't attribute though I won't attribute the entire narrative of aid to Africa. So basically, Africa stands at a very important crossroad. We understand that Africa comes behind when it comes to when it relates to development. We are very much behind compared to like other parts of our world. So Africa cannot be attributed as a continent, as a place that has been dependent on aid. And for the records, aid is actually important and is needed in Africa because thinking about it and comparing it with our European counterparts, Africa stands in a tropical zone where we already had extreme temperature. So slight changes in global climate has drastically worsened the temperature conditions in Africa. But in other parts of Europe, we understand and we see very well that our European counterparts were in much better temperate regions. So slight changes in the global climate has not had significant or adverse effects on them. We understand that thinking about all of this, Africa has been developmentally backwards. So we've not had the systems, we've not had the structures to cushion us from the effects of global climate change as as compared to our counterparts. So again, the question is not about aid. The question is about how well is aid utilized. Aid is required because we have been geographically positioned where we are exposed to greater and more severe challenges climate speaking. So we're at a place, we're at a crossroad that doesn't really favor Africans or the continent, especially West African. So we should be looking at the aid should be a form of partnership, should be a form of partnership, assisting us get to the global goals that the entire world has when it comes to global climate energy. So basically, our issue should not be about aid. Our issue should be about how well is aid utilized. That's the question we should be asking ourselves as Africans. Are aid used to build climate resilient systems? Are aid used to ensure that our continent is safer, is climate resilient? Our aids used to ensure that we have climate smart processes. Our aids used to ensure that we have green energy, green agriculture. Are these aids used for the right purposes? That's the questions we should be asking ourselves. We should not be focusing on aids, but we should be focusing on how well the aids are utilized to ensure that Africa is climate smart, Africa is resilient, Africa has a sustainable future moving forward. Thank you so much, Michael.
Okay, thank you for that. Turabong, I'm interested in your thoughts about foreign aid, but I'm also quite keen to move on and talk about taking a slightly more. I mean, global headlines have always painted the African continent exclusively through the lens of tragedy, devastating floods, encroaching deserts, and systemic vulnerabilities. So, can sustainability change that perspective? Do you think?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. Just like I said earlier, yes, sustainability is changing and can change that perspective. Like I said earlier, Africa isn't about charity. We aren't just about charity or saving nature. Oh yeah, nature is about to crumble. Let's save nature. Let's go offer some charity. It's about business and massive commercial value. It's about economic power that we possess. Sustainability strips the entirety of Africa as a continent and Nigeria as a country from the patronizing lens of pity, looking at us like we're pitiful, we are experiencing problems we did not cause. Let's go throw in some aid there and save them. But it forces global headlines to stop looking at Africa as charity. We shouldn't be looking at Africa as charity, waiting for a handout, waiting for handouts to actually save their economy whenever it actually crumbles. But we should start looking at Africa. Sustainability, in fact, makes us or makes the entire world to start looking at us as indispensable, as wealthy, a very much wealthy partner that holds the key to the future of global economy. Because just like the map you produced earlier, we hold the key. Africa holds the key to the future of global economy. So yes, in fact, sustainability can change that perspective. Thank you so much.
Okay, so you were telling me the other day about Africa's most significant untapped innovation and investment markets. Can you expand on that? I'll let you go first, Torabong, and I'll ask the same question to you, Oban.
Okay. Yes. Just like we said, I think I made a very bold statement that we hold the keys to the future of the global economy of the world. And if you want to expand on that, I could just tell you that when we call Africa the most significant, when I say Africa is the most significant on green tapped market in the world, we're not just talking about coming here and installing some few solar panels on some roofs. We're talking about the multi-billion dollar structural and transformational positions that we hold as a continent. And also Africa's top development banks lately and private equity firms are heavily playing down other sectors of our economy because they recognize that Africa as a whole or as a region on earth can scale clean energy production at at very high speeds rather, and very low cost. And the global market as a whole, the global market desperately needs Africa to be able to sustain what we call clean or the clean future of global economy. Thank you so much, Mike. My colleague would also expand on that.
Okay, over to you then, Oban.
Thank you so much, Michael. So, to add to the thoughts of my colleague, I would say I would not like to think about it as a single main opportunity, but as an intersection of two very important resources that Africa do on. So, number one, the first one is that we have a very young, vibrant, and teeming population. Very recent statistics shows that at least over 60% of the African population are below 25 years. So this shows us that we have like a very teeming, a very hardworking, a very vibrant population of people that could grow and they could strive to ensure that they push the African agenda to where we need it to be. But not just as people, what we also have is our geographic positioning, which keeps us at a very important place in terms of global energy dynamics, especially as we progress into green energy. So Michael, basically, we have two very important resources, which is our people and our geographic positioning. So for our people, having a young teeming population means that we have enough manpower to drive the technological advancements we need to, whether it's in physical infrastructure or software infrastructure. We have the young, driven, very hardworking youths to drive that future for Africa. And most importantly, we are globally positioned at a place that would assist Africa reach its biggest potential. So, talking about global energy, we take a retrospect to look at it. We understand that every single country that has controlled global energy over the years has always been a global powerhouse. And not just being a global powerhouse, they have always been the countries that has driven innovation, that have driven change, that have been powerhouses in different sectors and aspects. So Africa sitting on such a huge gold mine means that if Africa invests strategically in invest strategically and harness its wealth of solar power and hydroelectric power, thermal, geothermal power, and the vast green resources and the very arable lands we have, and so many natural resources that are available in Africa. Africa would not just sit at the global stage in terms of energy, but also we will sit there because we have the youth, we have the people to man these resources, to man these facilities, and to drive Africa to a sustainable and a very viable economy moving forward. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you. So we've had a couple of comments which I like to call up. Eric, carbon credits for the buyers mean full transparency and master governance on top of clear policies on ownership of forest land and advantages to the local population and territories. Are these factors met? Before you, I'm going to ask just one of you to answer these questions because time's pushing on. We've also had a comment from McDonald's Cookie. I'm happy to be in the room discussing sustainability in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. This is one of the most important conversations we are having right now, and it is one where AI has genuinely transformative role to play if we are intentional about how we deploy it. From an AI and data perspective, what excites me most is the potential for predictive analytics to reshape how Nigerian farmers, businesses and policymakers make decisions. We are sitting on enormous volumes of agriculture. It doesn't show on the screen here, but I have the advantage over you. I can read the rest of it. If we are intentional about how we deploy it. From an AI and data perspective, what excites me most is the potential for predictive analytics to reshape how Nigerian farmers, as business and policymakers make decisions. We're sitting on enormous agriculture. Oh, it stops my comment there as well. So I'm not quite sure how that comment finishes. Sorry about that. But maybe that wasn't really a question, more an observation, I think. But do either of you, not both of you, because we're running short of time, have any thoughts about the comments from Eric here about carbon credits and transparency? Is that being met in Africa, do you think? Just for one of you. I don't think we've got enough time for both of you to answer that question.
Well, just a comment. Okay, my colleague, did you want to say something?
I think I can just lean some thoughts into that. So, Michael, would you be able to project the question once more so we could just handle it from there? Okay, yeah, we'll start with the basic understanding of carbon credits. We understand that carbon credits is basically transmitting or changing, because we understand that energy moves from one form to another. So basically, carbon credits is basically changing or the reduction in emission into economic value, basically. So the question goes if we're actually accounting for ownership of the different variables that would give you the leverage to access carbon credits. So I would say the economies, I mean the companies and the institutions that assessed carbon credits are actually adhering to these global policies and these global frameworks. So we do not have companies here that do not adhere to these things. They actually adhere to in full so as to assess these carbon credits. And as I earlier spoke about, we have a new legislation on carbon credits. This actually lays the legal framework for assessing these credits and ensuring that they are not just given out, but they are given out in the right way and following some very serious legal frameworks. So, for real, Africa and Nigeria specifically are actually ensuring that carbon credits are only assessed by those that actually meet the full requirements for assessing these credits. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for that. So we are running over time. So what I thought we'd do, I've got a couple more questions. I'll ask one to one of you, one to the other one, and then we just conclude. So either of you can volunteer to answer this question, but I'm interested in demographics. The population in Nigeria is 242 million. Nigerian officials, including the Vice President Kashim Shettima, project the population to hit approximately 440 million by 2050. And according to Business Insider, Nigeria is likely to become the world's second most populous country by 2100, behind India, but ahead of China. But whilst Nigeria is a big country, it is not so big that a population of, say, 750 million might not make it seem crowded. To put that in perspective, Nigeria is roughly 13 times bigger than England, and at the moment its population is 4 times greater. But if the projections are correct, by the end of this century, Nigeria will, roughly speaking, have the same level of density of population as England. And right now, the political discourse in England is permeated by the belief that the country is overcrowded. So is this expected doubling in population over the next quarter century or so, or tripling by 2100? Is this good or is it bad? That's a big question, but I'm going to ask just one of you to have a go at answering that. Any volunteers?
Okay. Let me just speak on that since my colleague came on the other one. So yeah, thank you so much. And the truth is, our population is going to have either a very big role to play if managed correctly rather, and it's going to be an absolute catastrophe if it outspaces the infrastructure. Your mathematical comparison of Nigeria to England is very, very correct. It's spot on. Reaching levels of that density means the country will have to, would I say, radically re-engineer how its society and how its society space and resources operate. The demographic growth isn't inherently good or bad per se, but it is an amplifier. The multipliers either project the country's success or its structural failures, safe to say. So that population either projects our successes or it actually shows the absolute catastrophe of a failure a country or a continent will be. But in this case, the country, Nigeria. The next quarter century isn't just a race against time to build green infrastructure and educational systems capable of holding 440 million people, but it's a race to also re-engineer how the society, how the space, and how our resources are going to operate when we reach such brings of 440 million people in population. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. So I've got one more question, and then we'll round up. I want to talk about the opportunity for Nigeria and the main challenges. That can be the concluding question. But I want to ask you a question, and Uban, if you want to answer that, I'll give you first right of refusal. But if you fancy it, I'll hand it over to Turabonk. But I only want one of you to answer this question because time's up against it. According to the EU's Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, large companies must scrutinise their supply chain for ESG considerations. What are the implications for Nigeria? Got any thoughts about that?
Thank you so much, Michael. So, the ECG framework by the EU is of very big importance right now because the EU is looking at a framework that companies do not just focus on profits because we're in a time, especially in Nigeria, that companies look to maximize profits at the expense of the environment, and this is an economic disaster. We shouldn't be doing this. So the EU's framework to ensure that companies ensure that their products are ethically and environmentally sourced in such a way that it's not just ethical, but also it's environmentally safe is a framework we need at a time like this, considering our ambitions for a climate safe and a climate resilient future. So again, I would say in Nigeria and for Nigeria, as much as this could put a constraint on growing companies, on thinking about their supply chain, thinking about their profits, thinking about their product sourcing and every single thing, it might be in the medium term a strain on these companies, especially when they're trying to compete in global markets. But in the long term, it saves the populace, it saves the economy, it saves sustainability, it saves the world at large. So again, I would say this is the right way to go, and companies should try to should implement these frameworks into their model to ensure that they are sustainably driving a future for Africa too. Thank you so much, Michael.
Okay, thank you for that. So what I thought I'd do is like to wind up now with a conclusion. And I'm going to hand it over to you to say what you want to say in the conclusion, anything that you feel that you haven't had an opportunity to say so far. But I'd very much like you, if at all possible, to focus on the opportunity for Nigeria. I'm only going to give you 1 minute each, so you haven't got very long. Turabon, would you like to go first, and then I'll let Ubon finish off.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mike. And I would just like to say, let me round up by projecting our main challenge and our main opportunity. And I would just like to say that Nigeria's single greatest hurdle is unlocking the massive amount of capital needed to build a climate resilient system, while simultaneously breaking down its historical macroeconomic reliance on crude oil reserves, because we do have a massive amount of reliability on our crude oil and its reserves. We need to simultaneously break down that historical macroeconomic reliance on those crude oil reserves. And Nigeria's sustainability opportunity lies in a decentralized private sector innovation, specifically what we call in Nigeria is micro, small, medium enterprises. We call them MSMEs. And we have to leapfrog old industrial models in energy and industrial agriculture per se, because Nigeria is building its modern landscape right now. It doesn't have to tear down the legacy 20th century systems. We can just skip right straight into the future, just like I said at the beginning. So thank you so much, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Turabon, and I'll leave the last words with you, Obon. Opportunities for Nigeria, or anything that you would like to, any last minute comments you'd like to make, but I'm only going to give you 60 seconds.
Thank you so much for that, Michael. So I would say Nigeria and Africa as a whole are also the very factors that would be responsible for our economic future. So being
Oban, you're breaking up a little bit at the moment. The connection's suddenly gone a little bit haywire. Do you want to have another go? But if at the moment you're not coming.
But these very factors are also what would be the driving factors for our future moving forward. So again, looking at the inverse, Africa stands where it has access to the best of the best green energy moving forward. And I'm calling on Africa, on Nigerians, on legislators, on governments, on different parastatals to invest in our green economy, to take what has hurted us for years to be what is going to be of advantage to Africa as we move forward. Also, moving forward, I'm also looking to call on governments, different organizations, and different parastatals to ensure that we do not just get aid, we do not just focus on the monetary grants we get, but also utilize these grants effectively to ensure that Africa becomes climate smart and climate resilient and also sustainable, not just for us in today's world, but for our generations yet unborn. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. And that's it for today. And see you all next week.
Thank you.